Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Last Founder podcast, where we talk about startups and founders in the age of post AI or AI, basically how AI and agents and agentic tools are changing everything we know about building companies and etc. I'm here with Daniel Maman from Corgi. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, but first I just have to show you real quickly, for those who are here with us on YouTube, his website with this cute dog. Because I can't stop talking about the dog. It's a real innovation. You have to tell me the story and this whole thing here, where I don't know. It's not really interesting. I'm just into that. Daniel, can you tell us a bit about yourself and Corgi and how you got to this point?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you. My name is Daniel. I'm a co-founder at Corgi. We are Corgi.ai. You can look us up. I hope you like our website too. My very talented co-founder, Asaf, is responsible to everything good about Corgi, including the website. So we are Corgi, and our goal and mission is to accelerate AI adoption the same way you want to adopt a cute dog right here. So we want to help you do that the same way with AI.
Okay. Um, so how old is the company? I mean, what have you done in the? Was it founded in 2026?
Yes, the company is fairly new. We exist for roughly half a year now. It's founded in the beginning of 2026. And the story behind is actually quite funny. So both my co-founder and I have previous experience in the startup ecosystem, both as founders and, for me at least, also as an employee. And before Corgi, I worked at Check. You can look it up. It's a unicorn, Israeli startup in the realms of cybersecurity and now also agentic security. And Asaf, my co-founder, had a startup for many years, and the name of his startup was EasyWay. And what they basically did was developing maybe one of the very first AI agents in the world for the luxury hospitality industry. So Asaf, my co-founder, was very fortunate to work with LLMs when even before the chat GPT moment, before even it was a thing, where was still a very, small company, not even a company, small nonprofit in Silicon Valley called OpenAI, which you could apply for access, for a text completion API over this weird thing called GPT 2.5. That's when he started to build on top of LLM. And as a result of that, he has the vast experience in building and interacting and using LLMs for way more than the average builder on the market now. And for me, at least, during my days at Check, what we basically did best, Check's still doing best, is detecting bots and malicious actors on the web, because most of the traffic over the web, even before the agentic era, was actually software. It was automated. It wasn't all just humans on the web. And of course, back in the day, you should just block it all, because usually they had nefarious intent, like bad intent. So you needed to develop very deep expertise in detecting bots and blocking bots. And all of a sudden, after the agents entered the game, all of a sudden, agent became legitimate actors, potentially, not necessarily. But right now, you can actually have agents buying things from you as a vendor on the internet. And that's why right now we see a very popular movement of startups that build agent first interfaces and go to market motions, right? That's why the whole GEO category is being exploding right now, because everyone understands that you need to market and sell to agents and not just for humans. So that was a great shift in the fundamental story, tech and product in checks that I had the privilege and opportunity to be a part of. And after I ended my tenure, I think you say, over there, and Asaf sold his company EasyWay, we were both freelancing for a while, just taking projects, for friends, family, and network around AI, because, everyone understood you must do something. Up until very recently, relatively, like maybe 2 years ago, some people were still skeptic, even inside the tech community and the startup ecosystem, about whether it's actually gonna, make a difference or not. And now I think there is no there's no question. Like no one doubts that. So everyone wanted to get that into their company. They wanted to adopt AI, both inside the product, like have AI native product offerings. Inside their R&D processes, they wanted to accelerate the velocity of their R&D and let them ramp up, and use the best practices of agentic coding. And in anything else, all the processes you have in the companies that are not R&D or building a product, you have your finance, you have your marketing, you have your sales, customer success, everything that, the product, everything that you have inside every function you have inside a company. So they needed a lot of help with that. And we decided to start Corgi to help them do that. That's the story behind.
Yeah, and it's actually quite interesting how your partner, what's his name?
My co-founder.
So how he was before the GPT moment, and it was like watching history, and it's just interesting. Like if he were here, I would ask him, like, when you were doing this, did you have a feeling this was going to explode, or what was the sentiment? I mean, you weren't there, so he's not here right now, but
perhaps you should have him too.
Yeah, maybe so. So you mentioned like this put, like I just phrased it like I opened it for questions from the audience beforehand. Like I just posted that I'm going to talk to you, and I got a few questions. So one person said basically the way I summarized his question was, maybe you can talk a little bit about how it is for putting AI or agents into the product versus putting it into the company, into R&D and other departments, right? Just expand on that angle, because it's a few different aspects, and I think some of these may be more well understood than others.
Yes, I agree. Like, let's start by saying that well understood is a relative word. Like, I see the current era roughly the same way the web was by the end of the 90s. Like, everyone understands it's going to change everything, but it's not well established yet how and the best practices. And, there is a lot of speculation and thesis of the market tests. So even when you say well known, it's relative. Like, nothing is settled yet. There's more to come.
Yeah.
However, we do see a difference in the rate of adoption across different companies and across different departments. Right now, what we usually see is that R&D teams, especially at startups and tech companies, are pretty well into the agentic era, agentic coding processes, whether it be the actual software building, the code review, or the processes around it. Usually their adoption is pretty good. It's pretty rare to see right now a modern R&D organizations that is, not using AI or using it in a very basic form. And that's also kind of a solved problem, because the big labs are handing you the solution. Codex, Cloud Code, Cursor, if you use it, like whatever you use, you have those ready-made off-the-shelf harnesses that can do coding for you. You have other players in the market that tackle the code review and code quality aspects of it. But because it's such a vast market that in a sense was labor intensive, and the cost of labor was very high, right? To hire a program, that's like a huge market for them. So there's a lot of people attacking this huge TAM and handing you ready-made solution. All you need to do is using that.
Yeah. Versus also, it's like closer to the optimization loop, right? So if they optimize that, they optimize themselves as well. And
it's pretty easy to optimize on code, because you can know what's the correct solution looks like. So yeah, you can optimize because you can have basically a reward or loss function. So yeah, you can use that. You can generate the training data and you can measure it. So it's very, so you can create models that are very good with code, as well known, Opus, GPT-5.
I want to hear the rest of your answer, but I also want to take a magnifying glass here, because there are different, there are enterprises, there are startups, there are different kinds of software shops, but there are also a new thing that didn't exist before, right? And that's like the vibe coder, right? Like teams or
the rise of the vibe. Absolutely, yeah. The vibe coders is definitely a category.
Yeah. But you're working with companies, basically, right?
Yeah, we work mostly with startups at various stages, all the way from, let's say, freshly funded seed seed rounds, like really like entrepreneurs. We had several cases where someone just raised their seeds. They didn't even, so you do two things. Once you have the seed funding, right? You're going to build your initial team and you call Corgi. So we had that working like really with the founder who's just, hiring his first team members, and he wanted us to help them be AI native from day one. And then you have during the life cycle, round A, round B, even a little bit after that, round C, but that's usually the people we work with because we want to work with people who are, let's say, the bleeding edge, early adopters, are willing to move fast. They're willing to, it's just the natural habitat for us. We always lived in those realms in our professional career. So I don't really have exposure into how, the Fortune 500 R&D organization of the world are behaving. I guess it's quite different.
Yeah. So new questions are popping up, but I want to maybe finish the original answer, right? About putting it in R&D and in other departments, right? Are you involved with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So is because you have the solutions handed to you for R&D by the big labs, it's kind of, easier. And of course, the R&D people by nature are more willing to learn by themselves and experiment. Always used to be the case. And once you want to build it into your own product or bring it to the other departments in your company, it's different. It's different because the people who need to interact with the agents now are not necessarily technical and not necessarily want to. So you need to really bridge the gap between the need, wants, and capabilities of your users, which could be your actual users, your customers, or your internal users, the other department, and to match it to the workflow. You also need to remember the ease of, let's say, how easy it is to interface with the outside world. Because if you're a programmer, your stack, is fairly standard. You have GitHub, you have Linear for tracking your project management. You just use the regular, very tools that are very easy to connect to, either as a local or they have an API or an MCP or CLI, whatever. So the agent just fluently, connects to them. To once you're talking about other departments with potentially working with more of a legacy tools and solution, it can be even harder to interface with them. So the challenges are just different.
So it's interesting when it's harder to interface. Is the default interface becoming the chat, or is it just do they need it to be layered on top of whatever software they're already using?
It really depends on the use case. But in the beginning, let's say up until a year and a half ago, everyone was just adding basically a chat interface inside their, existing app and handing you some sort of a copilot. So the idea was, all right, now you can use our software instead of clicking buttons on the UI. You just type what you want in this chat that you had, chat interface, and it works out of the box. So that used to be, what everyone did up until a year ago. But now everyone is moving out of that and actually letting you connect to their apps natively from your own agent, Codex, Load Code, Corgi.ai, Cowork. So everyone is creating right now. We see MCPs, CLIs, APIs, wrapping them with skills. The idea is making agent-first interfaces. And some companies even take it further and say we are doing agent-first marketing, which is the whole growth thesis is going to be, all right, when someone needs, for example, in a developer tool, very common, right? Someone built for developer right now. So what would be the most common flow for a developer today? He's sitting with his Cloud Call, most likely, brainstorming, and he needs a tool, right? And then he needs to make a decision. Either I just vibe code it or I buy, because something, it's going to take too much time. There are technical constraints. Maybe there is whatever it is. Maybe, maybe I need a phone number and I can't just vibe code a phone company into an existence, right? So he tells, all right, to recommend me, what should I use? And the agent go and calls, web search tool and have something in his training data. And he gives you recommendations. And you very likely as a developer to choose the first one he gives you and move on with your life. So people understanding that and say, all right, I need to be visible and compelling for the agent to recommend me. And not only recommend me, for example, Cloudflare just released this with their temporary deployment. They like to just start and build it and integrate it in the stack. And then later we can figure out the opening an account and pricing and everything.
So you can start directly from Cloud Code via MCP without creating an account?
Yes, exactly. The idea that people now are trying to reduce the friction to start using their service for agents to the absolute minimum, because the reasoning is once it's integrated into a built thing that shipped and succeeded, they're going to pay later, right? So it's basically a PLG, but for agent first.
A PNG?
Product-led growth.
You can... PRT, yes. And PRT, yeah. I thought you said the PNG, the image format, the audit was. Okay. And I'm going to give you one question from the chat, right? I'm still using ChatGPT as the main chat. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, I think, but it already knows all my data, etc. So the chat, when I was prepping for this, it gave me one question. Is Corgi a services company, a productized consultancy, or an early prototype of what software companies become when agents do the delivery?
That's a great question. And the answer is no one really knows yet. And that relates to my previous point about, nothing is settled and there is more to come. Because what does the future of software even looks like? I think no one knows. I think the VCs even doesn't know. And that's why the market kind of froze, because some people think software alone, just software can't even be a product anymore. So the line between services and productized, I don't remember the exact phrase, but like productized services and agent delivery, it's all, just maybe different point on the spectrum, and the boundaries are not well defined yet. So our ideas, eventually we will find out, and the market will find out, and we will find out by the market telling us what it needs and wants and willing to pay for. And so we're still experimenting with that. But the idea is that, yes, it is service. It's tailor-made for the customer. Once we have something repeatable, we productize it, and maybe eventually it could just be a product. But again, who knows? I think FDEs, forward deployed engineers, is the most, on the rise job title for this exact reason.
I think I heard the term, but that doesn't really, I don't remember what it means. Forward deployment engineers. It's like basically this, what you described, just putting in AIs in.
It's basically, we'll send an engineer to figure out your workflows and problem and integrate a solution for you, usually based on AI. Palantir invented this term, that was their model. But now basically every company does it. Every company with AI native offering sends the FDE to actually integrate, understand the customer pain, and make a spec around it, and then design a solution and integrate it. So is it a service or a product? The line is blurred today.
Yeah, so I think it's great that you're not like sticking to a particular story where you don't know what's going on. You're saying like, we're here for you, for the customers. We're going to see what works, and maybe we'll replicate some parts to other customers or not. But like, we're here for you first, right?
Yeah, I actually have this. I know that I see it reversed, but it's a user-led. It's one of our core values. We had our core values of Corgi defined, and that's number one is user-led. So I have it right in front of me. That's why I can show it to you. So that's the idea. Like we're very much user-led.
Yeah, so it's like it's not what you think works, but you work with users to see what they need. So what kind of pains are you seeing users? I mean, there's probably the obvious ones and less obvious ones.
Yeah, so I think it comes back to the future is here, but not equally distributed. There is this quote, right? So even if you look inside a single company, of course, it's right across the market. I bet there are some companies who still live like it's 2022. But even if you look inside the same company, you'd usually see this imbalance between R&D and the rest of the company in startups. And that creates pain because R&D, it's basically the units that builds the product, the things that the company sells to the outside world. And around it, you have the delivery engine, right? The sales, the marketing, all the people who needs to put this output in the hands of users. And agentic coding vastly increases the throughput and the velocity of the R&D organization. But if it's not adopted to the same extent and utilization in the rest of the company, bottlenecks appears, right? And I think that's also part of the reason why Cloud Tag is interesting, the latest product by Anthropic, which the idea is, all right, we will let the rest of the company, the people who don't do the coding, use the agent in a more friendly, intuitive, native way. And also, as we talked about it, in a multiplayer way, we let multiple people collaborate with one agent, the same agent, and that could potentially solve the problem. So that's one of the problems we see: the collaboration, the processes, everything that is not a coder sitting in front of his own, coding agent delivering and shipping code.
Yeah. So you mentioned I understand that they need to basically make like, it's not really a layer that the different company, different team members can communicate with. It's a language. I don't know how to describe this. The common ground, basically, right? That's the most abstract way to put it. You mentioned the Cloud Tag and multiplayer mode, and it's just I was planning to, I guess, to shoot a few more questions, but I want to take a detour and just talk a little bit about something, a community that we're launching, and just I just ran into this difficulty yesterday or the day before. So I came to, I have a developer background, rich developer background in the past. I haven't programmed for many years, and I wasn't really building anything for a while until earlier this year, when I installed OpenClaw, and I felt like this my productivity is now 100x, and I'm able to do everything. And it was for a while, but then I got like a little, I don't know, it got basically the stuck within itself, let's say, right? Various bugs, and I fixed them, and then I fixed them with Cloud Code, and then that didn't work. So I started grinding to a little bit of a halt. Me as like a personal, a vibe coder, you would if you would. And I think that today there's really like so much this gap of information, right? And it's not just getting wider in a bit, right? In a way, right? Because new things are, new tools are always, new methodologies are always coming up on a weekly basis, if not more. So I decided to launch this new community called Build, where people can learn by building, learn by shipping. Actually, it's not just for building products, just doing the entire cycle. Sales, marketing, products, but on small things in the beginning. And I figured this could be a way for people who are like mostly solo builders to come together, and they each can work on their own projects within the community. They can each work on the joint community projects, like open source projects, and learn new tools and teach others. Okay, that's the basic premise of the community. And I started describing things I want. I picked like a first, like a starter pilot project for the community to build a quest board that can list different quests, different projects that people are working on, and maybe with bounties, etc. And I've been working with the GitHub Copilot, right? And have been waiting for a Cloud Tag to I don't know, come out or to implement it. But then I realized that I have to pay like for others to also participate in this flow with GitHub Copilot. They have to have seats, and I can't really organize that. I have to pay per seat. And for people who are sparsely, that's the key word maybe here, sparsely contributing to a project, it doesn't make sense to pay $30 for like a month where somebody only like works an hour a week, right? So like right now I'm a bit stuck. I don't know what's the right move for me for setting up this community. And generally, if you have any advice for this, like more open source or less committed sort of agentic flows. It's still early. If I want to get a proper advice from you, we need to dig more deeply, I'm sure. But just like what comes up when I say this.
Let me see if I can hear your need correctly. You want to have an agent that will be multiplayer and will help you with growing and facilitating whatever related to the build community, right?
Yeah, and I need to understand like where that agent lives or communicates, right? Or like
Yeah, absolutely. So you need to all right. Imagine there's no agent. Imagine this community is, it's like 1 year ahead from now when it's thriving and everyone participates. Where does it happen? Like where do people hang out? It could be Slack, WhatsApp, Discord, choose one. But in any one of those, you can integrate a multiplayer agent into the shared room where everyone is hanging out, where the cocktail party is actually happening, and just have it that way. And right now, I'm not aware. I think I read one tweet about an open source version of it. I think it's open tag, but don't get me on that. Maybe I'm wrong. I think I saw a tweet the day after or the same day that Cloud Tag launched. Someone wanted to capitalize on the hype and, open the repository. And I can vouch for it because I haven't dug into it. But I guess, like everything, the open source world will fill the void and you'll have something you can just spin up. That's one option. The other one actually would be to eat your own dog food and learning by shipping and building. You could go and build one yourself, right? You can just take OpenClaw or whatever harness there is and wrap it, extend it, modify it in a way that let it be multiplayer and safe at the same time, which that's like the main main challenge. Because I have a elaborated blog post about it. If you're interested, maybe you can link in the description. But that's only possible to do by yourself, and that will teach you everything you need to know.
Yeah, so that's definitely like actually we're still debating like what's the correct like starter project or pilot project, and then something like that lives in our let's say for now WhatsApp community and can summarize our tasks and do stuff and so it's like always I feel this tension between I don't want to reinvent the wheel, and like when I heard, okay, I know GitHub issues exist, and the Claude tag exists, or I don't know if it's generally available right now or not, but
still in beta only for Teams and Enterprise plan.
Yeah, but also I need to buy the team edition, which means paying per seat. So it's like the pricing model is different, but yeah, so we might go down that direction of trying to find other either integrate the existing toolings or build something on our own and contribute back. Definitely. So do you think that just maybe one last thing on this community, do you think it's interesting? Does it feel, can it feel a need for people, again, for trying to not build alone, not fill the knowledge gap and learn by shipping? That's the
absolutely. There are multiple communities like that all over the world because a lot of people want to, close the gap, and a lot of people feel comfortable, and just, it's just fun to know there are more people with you and doing the same thing and learning together and helping each other. People are, social creatures by nature. So it makes perfect sense. And I think it can work out because there are plenty of living examples and comparables that worked out to be really great. So absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to send you some info on that later if you want to dive more deeply. Sure. I'm personally interested in I'm always like the products that I like that I build are always almost always solving my own pains. So I'm interested in so-called founderless companies, in companies where I want to talk about my case, right? I'm a founder. I had this company, Fredo.ai, and before the GPT moment, like we didn't really have LLM capabilities, but it was basic like fire and forget, store information in some backend, And then when GPT came, we integrated that and became like a chat productivity system. But it was hard. It was hard building a company. I don't need to tell you. And at some point, I decided to downsize, and basically we're just on maintenance mode now. So when I'm thinking of maybe setting up new companies now in the future, I don't want to be like to step into the founder role. I'm dreaming of this magical AI system, maybe with some humans that are that I don't need to manage, right? But I want to have this interface into this magical system where I act as a board member, right? I set the direction, I pay some funding, but it's not it shouldn't be something I hire, right? It should be something that sort of shares the risk with me.
Yeah.
Is that vision like happening? Is it realistic or not? What do you think?
All right. So I think in theory, it makes perfect sense. Let's think of it from the lenses of junior versus senior employee at your company. All right. So assume you're an entrepreneur. You're getting something from 0 to 1 off the ground. Once you figured out your product market fit, and some people say you do the first $1 million in sales by yourself, founder led. And then you need to bring, the external people. It could be probably sales in the beginning and later on executive once the company grows and you have a lot of teams that needs to be coordinated. And what is the essential difference between, super junior and super senior person for each role? It could be like a programmer and it could be executive. So I think it's how abstract the outcome you assign to them. Like what can they own? Because if you think of it, the CEO basically owns in public companies the price share, the share, right? Like the price of the stock. That's what you own. That's the outcome you need to optimize. Super abstract, right? Like very simple. Graph goes up to the to the right and up, but it's very hard to tell which task needs to be actually done in order for that to happen. So the more you move downwards the organizational ladder, the goal needs to be well defined in a more finer grade term. The most junior person in the company have no judgment. He doesn't even own any metric. It's just you do this. But this very well defined narrow task eventually serves a bigger goal, which has a bigger goal. For example, you need someone to enter manual data entry, the most generous thing in the world. But it could be he needs to keep the CRM up to date, because if he doesn't keep the CRM up to date, when the CRM is owned by the sales organization, we won't follow up on lead, and lead would stall and our pipeline would be bad. So it means our target revenue wouldn't be good. The revenue targets are owned by the CRO, right? Which eventually affects our growth, which affect the stock price, which is owned by the CEO. So I don't think you can still be a board member and assign the CEO role to AI yet, because that would be basically make it go right and up, and like AI is not there yet. So I don't think it's realistic now. Like you could give them more well-defined task, but you need to be the orchestrator, right? That's the word for it. You need to be the CEO. You need to figure out what needs to be done to move the needle to the direction you want to. But who knows? Maybe in 2 years from now, the models would have a 220 IQ to like the regular Opus you pay $20 a month for. And you better tell them you be the CEO. And I would be just the investor. I would give you money and go do that. Like maybe they would be better operators than us, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. So I'm exploring this company called Co-Founder, cofounder.co, that they sort of claim to do that. I mean, they're sort of like an agentic
Yeah.
build a company.
It's also in the latest batch of Y Combinator. I forgot his name now, but basically an entrepreneur who cloned himself in AI, and you just give him like one task: go make money, and they claim they're already making, I don't know what, like 40 or 60,000 MRR. Nice story. Like I get why, why would people buy into that story? That like you click a button and the machine, it's basically a money printing machine, right? That's like the
I played with Co-Founder, and it's not really you click and that's it. I mean, it's just sort of a structured, opinionated way to build a company, right? You basically you type into it what you want, and it like helps you build the company mission, and then it opens the different departments. And but it's I don't know. I'm still the jury for me is still out on like whether it's like enough or not. It's definitely a step in the right direction, but it's
It's a step. It's a step in the right direction. It's also mimicking what's best for humans, which is not necessarily what's best for models. Who knows? And but I think we definitely no one can know the future, right? Neither do I. Now, neither do you. Like no one. And but let's see. I'm sure there's a lot more to come, as I said, and we will see great innovation in that space. But I don't think it's a solved problem yet.
Yeah. So, what are a few things that surprised you when you working on Corgi and working with clients? What do you think that didn't happen the way you expected?
Good question. I think one of the things that keeps to surprise us every time is that keeping in contact in reality, in a sense, because we keep to find out, we say, all right, it's related to our previous discussion about solved problems. What is solved and what is not, what is trivial and what is complicated. For some people, it really depends, because as we say, the future is not equally distributed. It's here, it's just, some people live in the future and some don't. So it's really hard for you to get out of your own, biases and filter bubble and everything that you live in and realize, wait, someone might have completely different experience and lived reality and opinions. So it sometimes still surprises us that we could see, we call it people working like it's 2022, like people manually jungling between different system, copy pasting, stuff into ChatGPT manually. And for us, we can see it can be that people still working this way, but we keep, finding out that in fact, there are people working out this way still to this day. Even in, large bleeding edge so-called companies, you still find those surprises. So that keeps surprising us every time.
All right, so that's one gap basically. That some I'll call best practices that you think are, from your perspective, are sort of obvious that people don't know how to use them.
Yeah, I'd say it's a capability gap, but it's also mental models gap. Like people just not defaulting, some people, you have the concept of reachability. What is the first tool you're going to pull out of your toolbox when you need to solve the problem? So for some people who live the agentic reality, it's going to be by default solved in an agentic way. Either they plug their Cloud Code or OpenClaw or whatever they're using, just plugging the pipes, that's it. So, and for some people, it would be to start manually work, in a sense, like open browsers tab and start copy paste information and creating spreadsheets. So it's also about your own just mental model and the tools you are used to work with.
Yeah, so actually that leads me to the next question from the audience. What's the default stack or one of the default stacks that you would recommend? And of course, if you work with an existing company, you work with what they have and you try to collaborate with that. But let's say somebody's starting fresh.
Well, I don't think it's really matters. Like, I think one exercise I would recommend everyone technical, in a sense, is go build a coding agent by yourself, and you'd see that the magic is maybe 90% in the model. Like, it's not in the harness. Like, really building your own version of Cloud Code or Codex, 300 lines of code, roughly. Once you do that, you understand that all the magic exists in the models, and the models, everyone gets the same model for free. Not for free, of course, you pay for inference, but that's where the magic is. It's really not in the harness around them. So I don't think it really matters. You could do that with Cloud Code, Codex, Pi, Maki, whatever harness you want to use, as long as you understand the principle and the conventions, for example, of the conventions for tools, the conventions of skills and empty files and how to structure them. Just, focus on the principles rather than any specific technology.
But, a personal interest of mine, I started with OpenClaw and it was great, and then it was crap. and there's a growing trend, right? People are talking about, and I did a survey in one of the groups, and I think that almost everybody said that they're switching to or have switched to Hermes, right?
Yeah.
So just on that, you said OpenClaw a few times, but for somebody starting now, you would recommend to move to another agent or OpenClaw?
run. It takes like an hour or two to set up one. So you can set up OpenClaw, you can set up the Israeli claim to fame NanoClaw, you can set up Hermes, any of the others. So T1 people like to experiment with NemoClaw because it comes from NVIDIA, so easy to for a lot of companies easier to them to go with NemoClaw and just start and see what works for you. There's really not that much of a difference between them all.
Right. So let's say again, learn by doing, learn by experimenting.
Exactly. And you can also you can also just build one yourself. Like take the source code, point your agent, and they tell him, I want to build my own version, explains how does it work, what's the architecture. Give it a weekend and you have your own version.
All right. So we're nearing the end of the interview. Do you have something you wanna just tell our listeners or even ask them, I don't know, point them into some direction?
I'm not sure what would be the most interesting for your audience because I'm not still yet sure who your audience is. But if I need to maybe crystallize it to everything, and there's a lot of hypes, there's a lot of tools. Every tools are getting out every day. So I think, as always, try to focus on the first principle and not the specific, implementations that hot at the moment. For example, OpenClaw, NanoClaw, Hermes. It doesn't really matter. Like as long as you have one, you use one, you understand the principle of what agent actually is, how it works, what are the tools, what is context. Well, like once you understand the building blocks, everything's it doesn't stop feeling like magic because LLMs always feel like magic, especially at the rate of improvement, but there's at least stop feeling like dark magic and more like cool magics that you want to experiment with. So but just stop being scary.
That's a nice analogy. Stop feeling like dark magic. I had another question here. What was it? Yeah, maybe just a topic that I think is also like painful for. Yesterday, I hosted like a founder gathering, and a few different founders talked about how their ADHD or ADD is now suddenly becoming a superpower. How they're using it to basically do many things at once. But from my perspective, it's something. It's a bit of addictive, right? Just like having this always available, always on thing you can talk to on your desktop, on your phone, in a family dinner, right? So it's like, how do you manage like boundaries? Like, just don't get sucked into that loop.
And yes, it's very addictive. That's the truth. And if you're a founder, there's always something that's going to consume you beyond the reasonable work-life balance. So I think, LLM just maybe add on top of that, but that was always the case. And I think if I need to reach, to fundamental, like, okay, let's say this way, it's easier to get down rabbit holes with LLMs, right? It could happen before if you're a person who reading Wikipedia, there's always another link you can jump into and keep reading, right? So LLM just make it easier to go down the rabbit hole. So I think going back to the user-led principle, put it in the hand of users, whatever it is that you're working, thinking, talking about for LLM as soon as possible. And then you get a feedback from reality and see if it's like really something that's useful to the world, or am I just building my own imaginary castle inside my head now? So I think that would be the advice. Just, try not to waste your own time.
And not stay in your own echo chamber, right? Just like
exactly, because LLMs are super good at convincing you that you're a genius. So contact with reality is more important than ever.
Nice. So thank you. And one last question: who would you be interested? Like, if I interviewed X, who would be interesting for you to listen to that interview? And then
wow,
maybe not Sam Altman, because people I can reach, I guess.
No, I think I don't know who you can read. I think the sky's the limit in a sense. But for me, anyone, I think really anyone that have some first-hand experience from real contact with an experimentation, as I said, with reality, end with the LLM would probably have something productive to add to this course, because no one is really an expert yet. This is still the beginning. It's the 90s for the web. Like so anyone who has the contact with the magic and reality would probably have something which is a value add to say.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel so too. I feel like we're just starting this podcast and every conversation is adding a lot of value. Thank you very much, Daniel. I'm gonna keep on track with keep following Corgi, and then hopefully we can touch base later as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My pleasure, Ron. Thank you for having me.